Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. If you can hear me, just type in the chat box and you can type your name and where you are joining us from. My name is Natasha Salifianji Kaoma, and I will be moderating the session today. We will wait for 2 more minutes and we'll be ready to start at 10:06 a.m. Central African Time. Hello, everyone. I can see the numbers are increasing and it's great to see people engaging in the chat box. You just need to type in your name and where you're joining us from, and we'll be ready to start at 10:06 a.m. Central African Time. Welcome. Good morning, everyone. 1 more minute. We are just about to start. We'll be starting at 10:06. For now, if you can turn on your video, I just want to see who's on the call. It feels a bit weird because it's so quiet and I'm the only one with my video on. I'll ask the panelists to turn on their videos, but if you can just turn on your video so I can see you and you can wave, that would be really good. Okay, I can see so many people waving. That's great. That's great. So it's 10:06 and we're just about 10:06 and we're just about ready to start. Good morning, everyone. This is Dr. Natasha Salifianji Kaoma, and I will be the moderator for the session today. Today is a very exciting session, and I'm excited about today because a lot of people have been requesting for this. I am the Chief Executive Officer of Copper Rose Zambia, and I will be moderating the session today. I'm joined by 2 amazing panelists, and I'll ask them to introduce themselves. The first one is Ashley Musonda, and the second one is Peter Mukuka. So today's session is going to be about how to start a youth-led organization or a business. And this is not restricted to only youth-led organizations, but if there are people that are over 40, over 50 that are on this call, there's never a good time to start a business apart from today. So today's discussion will be about getting the nuances of how to start, what to look out for, what the registration process is. Most of the discussions will be contextualized to the Zambian context, but if you are joining us from another part of the world, I'm very sure that there's still a lot that you can learn from. Before I get into some of the definitions, I'll ask the panelists to just introduce themselves. We'll start with Ashley.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening. My names are Ashley Musonda from Zambia, Copperbelt. I'm the operations manager at Select PB in Zambia. I hold a bachelor's degree in accountancy from the Copperbelt University. I graduated in 2016. I'm still a youth. So looking forward to hearing from you and sharing my experiences as a youth in starting up a business.
Thank you, Ashley. And we're really excited to have you. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll hand over to you, Peter.
Hello, good morning, everyone. I hope you can all hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm Peter Mukuka. I'm based in Lusaka, Zambia. And right now, currently the position I hold is a project manager. I did project management, and I've also done computer science and computing and information systems. I'm very passionate about the youths. I've worked with the youths for the past 6 or 7 years. I've also worked with orphans and vulnerable children. In my line of work, working with the youths, I can say that efforts really yield fruits, because I've seen youths that coming from like an orphan, someone who was an orphan as a child from a young age, to the time that now they are employed and they are doing well with their lives. And it gives me pride to know that I had an input in their lives that has impacted them. And so working with organizations, community-based organizations, faith-based organizations, I've seen organizations starting up from the grassroots to becoming big organizations that are receiving big funding from different donors. And so it's something that I know that it really works as long as you put in effort. And so I'm very excited about this program, to be able to share the knowledge that I have in formation of NGOs, managing NGOs, and just impacting people's lives at different levels. So thank you so much for the opportunity once again.
Thank you, Peter. And this program, I'm not sure whether it says program, I feel like I'm on TV or something, but anyway, this webinar is brought to you by the Copper Rose Zambia Youth Hub. I'm the Chief Executive Officer, but we have a great team that has put together this webinar. And our hub is a space where young people can come and learn, and young people can come and interact. Now that we're not really meeting in person, we've brought some of these discussions that happen at our hub straight to you via this webinar, which is being streamed on Facebook and being streamed on YouTube as well. So for the purposes of this discussion, I must make some definitions, and I want to define youth. Youth is a very dynamic definition because each region and each country has its own idea of what age it is. Some people say it's from 15 to 35. In other countries, it goes from 15 to 30. And in other countries, it's a really dynamic. But for the purposes of this discussion, we will be using the definition 15 to 35, which is the African Union definition. And we have two speakers from different backgrounds, because some of you may be thinking, I don't really want to start a nonprofit, I want to start a business. So how do I go about it? So this discussion will cover both aspects of that. Peter is coming from an NGO background, which is a nonprofit background, and Ashley is coming from a business background. So I'm hoping that we'll get the best of both worlds during this discussion. So to kickstart this discussion, how would you explain a youth-led organization, Peter?
Thank you very much. Different organizations are managed by different people. Some organizations are managed by a group of females, for example, which is, a particular sex. Could be a group of women, could be a group of men, and then also it could be a different age, so to speak. So you find that there's a group of women who have come together of a certain age that are managing an organization and focusing on certain programs or certain issues that they are, certain issues that they are dealing with. And so when you talk of a youth-led organization, what comes to my mind is the youth that are managing an organization and solving certain problems in the community. So as you have said, in the African context, where we look at youths being between the ages of 15 and 35, I believe that such an organization will be led by that group. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Peter. And Ashley, how would you define a business?
A business is any entity that seeks to make profits from an activity, either through the provision of goods or services. They do intend to make profits, but you should know that there are times when a business can make a loss, but that doesn't stop them from being a business. The important part is to standpoint in what you're doing. So that's the definition of a business. It also refers to maybe an organization that seeks profits by providing goods and services in exchange for payment. So that's the difference between an organization, an NGO, and a business seeks profits. That's basically the sole purpose of the business, it's profit maximization.
I see. Wow. And what would you say are the benefits of starting a business at a young age? A lot of young people are afraid of starting businesses. Why would you encourage someone to start in their early age as a young person?
You know, when you start early, you give room to make mistakes. Because when you look at a business, you are not guaranteed that you make profits, you make money the moment you start. But as a youth, you are given that time to learn even from others. Unlike when you are old, that investment becomes like it's a risk. It's a big risk because when you're old, you don't want to spend money unnecessarily. But when you're young, you can take the risks of investing and you gain more experience actually.
Thanks. From a non-profit perspective, Peter, I know you've been doing this work for many, many years, and it also reminds me of my own experiences because I tell people I have 10 years experience in community mobilization and I'm not even 30, and people go like, but what were you doing? And yeah, so I started out as a teenager in being involved in youth work, and Copperos has been running for 6 years, for example. But from your perspective as Messiah Ministries, and I know in your previous experience, what would you say are the benefits of starting early?
Okay, thank you very much. So when you start early, you have enough time to learn from experience. You have enough time to learn from the mistakes that you'll be making as you grow. Okay, as we all know, NGOs are non-profit making organizations. But of course, that doesn't necessarily mean that an NGO cannot generate income for itself to be able to support itself and the cause that it stands for. And so when you start early, you give yourself and the organization together with your team enough time, in the process to learn and build something bigger. Also, the advantage is the fact that you have a long period of time to impact communities, to impact, in the cause that you are working towards. You have that time, and then also it gives you an opportunity, to enjoy the things that you love doing for a longest period of time.
So a lot of people are hearing about why you should start early and why you should do it. But my big question right now is, what are some of the documents, what are some of the requirements that one needs in order to set up?
Okay.
And also, what are some of the types of that people can have for the different kinds of organizations and businesses that they may want to run?
Right. So quickly, I'm going to give two different definitions. I'll just take you back a little bit. I'll be quick. The definition of an NGO, the Oxford Dictionary defines an NGO as a non-profit organization that operates independently of any government, typically one whose purpose is to address social or political issues. That's the definition that Oxford gives us. But on the Zambian perspective, under the NGO Act of 2009, an NGO is defined as a private voluntary grouping of individuals or associations, whether corporate or incorporated, not established or operated for profit, partisan politics or any commercial purposes, and who or which have organized themselves for the promotion of civic education, advocacy, human rights, social welfare, development, charity, research, or other activity or program for the benefit of interest of the public through resource mobilization from sources within or outside Zambia. That's our Zambian context in terms of the definition under that act. And so these organizations are set up really to bridge the gap, where governments are not, able or have that disadvantaged in terms of being able to, support the people and the communities. And so NGOs are there, or rather exist, to be able to bridge that gap and support the government in being able to achieve its agenda. And so when you are setting up an organization, you need to understand that this is something that you will do not for profit. This is something that you need to do from your heart, because you may go through certain periods where there's no funding, for example, for the NGO to run. And so it has to be driven by passion. It has to be driven by something that is of interest to that group of people, because if, in as much as an NGO can be started by an individual, can be started by an individual who has the vision. Obviously, this NGO needs to have a team of people that will push it. Okay, and so when you are starting, obviously you will need certain resources, financial resources, because you obviously need transport. You obviously need money for printing documents, photocopying documents, and things like that. So have I drifted from the question, giving too much detail?
No. I'm just curious to know what are some of the institutional documents they may want to put together for them to go and register in the different kinds of registrations.
Okay, I was going towards that, because you may want to have that background first before you come to the documents that you obviously need. And so when you have these resources together, now you get to the things that you need to put in place in terms of trying to start up an organization. In our Zambian context, NGOs can be started by non-nationals and nationals who are Zambians. So in the Zambian perspective, if you're a Zambian, the things that you need is the constitution. So you need to sit together and come up with a constitution. A constitution is basically a document that will have information about the organization and roles and responsibilities for the members of the organization. It also defines the purpose for which the organization exists. Then, aside from the constitution, you will need to get application forms from the registrar under the Ministry of Community Development. And then, aside from that, the members, the minimum of 5 representing the organization, will need to get clearance certificates from the police to ensure that these members do not have any criminal records, because organizations are sensitive. Some organizations will be dealing with children, some organizations will be dealing with women, and so on and so forth. And so that is just something that has been put in place in terms of security. So aside from that, there's need to have official identification, that is a copy of the national registration card or a passport for a non-Zambian nation. And then aside from that, you need to get a recommendation letter from the line ministry in relation to the services that the organization will be providing, for example. So if an organization will be dealing with social services, they'll need to get a recommendation letter from the Ministry of Community Development and Social Services. Okay, and then they'll need to prepare a letter, an application letter that will go to the registration office. Okay, and then aside from that, what else? Police clearance, I've spoken about that. Application forms. Oh, the other thing that I forgot to mention is the name clearance, because obviously you don't want to have a name which already exists. So you need to go to this is obtainable at the registrar under the Ministry of Community Development. So you get a form which is called name clearance form. So that form, you indicate 3 possible names for the organization in the order of preference. So your first preferred name will be on top, then the second and the third. I think those are the key documents that will be required to have when submitting the registration. Yeah.
Thanks, Peter. So Peter just summarized to us some of the documents that may be required for registration of a nonprofit organization. Before I get to you, Ashley, I just want to throw it back to the participants. Is there anyone who can give me at least 3 documents or 3 steps that are required to set up a nonprofit organization? I just need you to raise your hand. Any volunteers? Any volunteers to run through the 3 steps or 3 documents that would be required to set up a nonprofit organization? I'm seeing people are not raising their hands. You'll be very surprised at the prizes that are coming for those that are interested in participating. When I spoke of prize, that's when I'm seeing more hands being raised. But the first person was Mikisi Silomba. Please unmute yourself and tell us 3 documents that would be required. Yes, Mikisi, we can hear you.
Okay, the 3 documents as earlier elaborated, it's the constitution, the first P1. Then again, the second item, I believe it's the business plan, which explains what to be tackling as an NGO or as a business ideal company. Then the other thing that is also needed, it's a list of members together with their NRC and any possible document that could support to say their need. Then that also includes the previous meetings that you have been having as to see if they have been successful or not. I think with that I can exhaust so that I can also leave chance to others. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mikisi. So Mikisi will get 100 kwacha airtime. Michelle from the Corporals team, please get in touch with Mikisi and get his contact details. So that's the first response. And what he said was, we need a constitution, you need to get a plan or a write-up which shows what exactly you want to do, and you need some members, and those members NRC details. Cynthia, do you want to make a contribution? Just mention those that have not been mentioned in terms of documentation and startup things that would be required.
Name clearance from the registrar. Community of registrar. He already talked about police clearance and the constitution. Those are the ones I heard because I also joined a bit late.
Okay, Cynthia, but that's not a complete response. Do you want to think of any other items that he might have mentioned towards the end, just before name clearance?
I remember name clearance. I remember we need to get police clearance as well. The constitution. Nothing else.
Recommendation letter. Yes, so we need a recommendation letter. So thanks, Cynthia. Please text your contact number to Michelle Malunga in the chat box and she will get in touch with you. So I'll pause here for now and I want to hear about the business side because a number of you may be joining this call and are thinking of either opening a non-profit or a for-profit. Ashley, what are some of the things that are required for the business to be set up?
Okay, thank you, Natasha. So just like any other entity, as Peter said, you need to apply for a name clearance with PACRA. So with PACRA, you'll be required to submit at least 3 possible names that you want your organization or your business to bear. So with PACRA, things have been made easy now. So you can go to the PACRA website, you can either download the forms or visit the nearest PACRA office for application. So with the names, you need to be very careful because there are certain names that cannot be accepted. Like a name that is too long or difficult to pronounce, a name that suggests that an applicant
Wapa, Cynthia.
a name that is completely already exists. that is borne by another company or organization. Offensive or undesirable names, and also deceptive or misleading names used, like the use of Zambia as a prefix. Then from the name clearance, once that is done, then you need to apply for incorporation. Are you planning to have it to open a private limited company, limited by shares or limited by guarantee? Is it a public limited company? So you would have made those decisions before you approach PACRA. From there, you also need a document to act, a document of consent for the director or a secretary of the company that you're opening, and you need the NRCs of those people. You also need an address for the business. So you need some proof of address for that business as well. Once that is done, you also need to have a form for the declaration of compliance. All these forms will actually be provided by PACRA, so it shouldn't really be a difficult issue. After that is done, then PACRA will assist you in setting up setting up your ZRA portal. Back then, before 2021, what used to happen was that once PACRA approves your name and the company is opened, you have to go to ZRA and open an account with them. But then PACRA starts that process for you for the registration of your company with ZRA. So with ZRA as well, looking at the size of the business that you want to start, it will either be under turnover tax, which is for income, estimated annual income of below 700,000 would have to be registered under turnover tax. And then incomes above 700 will have to be registered under income tax. So the taxes differ. Under turnover tax, that's TOT, you will pay 4% of your sales. Then with income tax, you'll be assessed and you have to pay quarterly. So 4 times in a year, then at the end of the year, they'll make an assessment of how much you've made, whether there's a refund that will be made to you or you have to pay more, depending on the amount of money that you've made. So basically, it's the name clearance that is done. Once that is done, you need to have the NRICs for the directors and the shareholders. And then you also need to have a proof of physical address. And then it is also important that you also open an account with a bank, because that business that you're opening will be an entity on its own. It won't run as you. You can have a business name or open up a business name that will bear your name. Let's say maybe Natasha Kauma Enterprises, that's a business name. And then there are also circumstances where you open a limited company. So you need those companies to run independently of you. So you have to open a bank account for your company as well. Thank you, Natasha.
Thank you, Ashley. I'm just curious to know, do you have any tips for people that are starting an organization or a business? What advice would you give about the name? How do you name the business or the entity?
Okay, your business name should actually try by all means to match it with the core business of what you'll be doing. Let me say maybe you'll be dealing with, you want to open a business that deals with farming, like you'll be selling vegetables and what. You can't choose a name that you can, maybe that will, I don't know, how can I put it? A name that will mislead people. Instead of directing people towards the vegetables, you'll be directing people towards maybe buying cars. So the name of the business has to be aligned to the business that you'll be doing.
I actually once saw a construction being done by a company called Something Catering, and I found that to be really funny. Peter, is it the same in the NGO sector? What advice do you have on picking a name?
Yes, it's actually the same. myself and together with my colleagues, my friends, we formed an NGO that we've been running since last year, since last year. So the name of the organization is called Men of Honor. Okay, and so the core business of our organization, or the vision that we have, is to work with men, because the organization, like I said in my preamble, that different organizations are formed by different people for different purposes. And so for us, it's an NGO formed by males, okay, and targeting the males, trying to build men that will be honorable in society. And so that's where the name is coming from. Yeah, so I would say
Thanks,
it's
Peter.
very important that the name of the organization is married to the core business of that particular organization.
So I think just to add on, Natasha, you need a name that will be professional. You just don't want to call your business anything. You need a name that will sell you out, because a business name, that is why it starts from, even for advertising to the outside world. It's the name that appeals. So you need to find an appealing name.
Thank you so much, Ashley. And another way that people think about names, especially for NGOs, is you could think about your overall vision. You could think about who you're trying to serve, because sometimes your direction may change as an NGO. Maybe you started working on one thing and then you start working on another thing, but your name is more like bringing you down. So another tip for naming is that you may look at what is your goal, what is your overall vision for the institution, as opposed to what you're doing. So for example, as corporals, we started with only menstrual health management. Now imagine if we called ourselves Zambia Menstrual Hygiene Project. Right now, we do projects on various things. We're doing HIV, we're doing sexual and reproductive health, we're doing many kinds of things. So sometimes organizations find themselves changing their name along the way because they were a bit too specific. And when you decide to change, maybe you are selling chikanda and you start selling beans, or you start selling something else, you might have a problem because your name of your business is Sante Chikanda Dealers or something. So there is a line somewhere in between being aligned to your business and being very specific, but also in allowing for adaptation and change as we go along. I'm seeing a lot of people posting questions in the chat box. Please feel free to type your questions in the chat box and we will be ready to answer them as we go closer to the top of the hour. I'm just curious to know from our panelists, can you tell us some of your personal experiences with setting up? You mentioned quite a lot of documents that will need to be done. What advice would you have for someone who just feels overwhelmed by the whole registration process?
My advice is that you need to be patient and tolerant. I had an experience when I went to Parker to register our first company. The lady that I found there was so rude, where she expected me to know everything that was required, and yet I was just starting up. I wanted to learn from her, but she was not open to give me those ideas. She just told me, go to the Parker website. That is not my responsibility. So from there, I learned that you need to be patient and you also need to educate yourself. Try to go through some of these websites and understand how things are run.
Peter, what are some of the experiences?
Yeah, so I'll just ride on on what Ashley has already alluded to. I think there are a lot of similarities in terms of non-profit and for-profit organizations. And so when you are starting, especially for NGOs, you know that you are investing money that is not going to come back, okay? You are putting in money that you know it's not going to come back, like it's not going to generate money, at the end of the day. And so if you are going to start an NGO with a mind of making money, you may find yourself lost somewhere and even committing a crime. And so when you are starting, you need to have it at the back of your head that this is something that you're going to do from the bottom of your heart. You need to be driven by a passion. You need to be driven by a desire, to bring about change in the field that you've identified that requires, your time and your support in that field. And so when you are starting, you need to be patient, like it's been alluded to. You need to invest your time because it requires time to move from one place to the next. You need time to go to the police, different offices from one place to the other. And so sometimes you may get frustrated because you find that you go to a government institution, for example, you want to you submit your documents there and they tell you that your certificate will be ready in 2 weeks, okay? You patiently wait for 2 weeks and you're excited. This is something that you've been looking forward to, running up and down, putting documents together, and then you finally submit it. You're hoping that in 2 weeks' time, your certificate of registration will be ready. You go there, the office, there's no one. You try to make some calls, there's no one to attend to you. You try to check in the next day, you're told, come back the next day. You go there, they tell you, come back next week. Before you know it, 2 months has elapsed. So in that process, you may end up being frustrated. And then secondly, you may find frustrations in trying to, get funding for your cause or for your organization. You make applications here and there for funding, but maybe at that particular time, people don't really believe in your cause, and so you may get frustrated at some point. So you just need to continue being persistent, continue pushing until, as long as you believe in the vision that you have, as long as you believe, in the cause, you need to keep on pushing. And you don't have to get frustrated at the end of the day, but you just need to have it at the back of your mind so that when you meet these obstacles, you are able to overcome.
Thank you. So I'll just ask one last question before we get into the questions that are in the chat box or questions that people may be curious about. If you're just joining us, this is the session on how to start up a youth-led organization or a business. And we're joined by our amazing panelists, Ashley Msonda and Peter Mukuka. And we are tackling some of the fine details about what you would need to do in order to set up. This is part 1 in a series of 2. Next week, we will be we will be digging deep into some other specific items. But for today, we're looking at the registration process and how to start from zero. For example, from where you're seated today, how can you say a month later that you have founded this organization? And then next week, we'll look at some of the other more specific things, for example, how to choose team members, how to work with a team, how to motivate people in the early stages and things like that. So I'm thinking, what are some of the major challenges that people should anticipate as they get into setting up a business or a youth-led organization, starting from the nonprofit side, Peter?
Right, excuse me. Yeah, so from experience, I think the challenges, number one, is getting people together to believe in your vision, because sometimes you find that there's one person who has the vision, okay, for the organization, the vision carrier, and then you want to get people, or you want to form a team, put people together. You want to sell out your vision. You want to sell out, your plan, your big plan for this organization. Sometimes you may end up with hiccups where certain people that you felt like, okay, this would be a perfect piece to fit in what I want to do. You approach, that particular person, you share your vision, you share your idea, and then they are just not interested, and that may really tone you down. Aside from that, when you have your team together, you have the people that have faith and believe in, your cause and feel like, okay, no, I really want to be part of this thing that you want to do. Okay, you bring them together, then you have the aspect of communication. You're dealing with people, it's a big thing. You find that there are people that are not really committing because there's nothing, coming out of it. There's no income, and people want to really focus on things that give them money, that give them something at the end of the day. And so to take them off whatever they are doing, to be able to support you in what you are doing, that will not give them money, may be a little bit difficult. The other aspect is the financial aspect. Obviously, you need finances to kickstart whatever you'll be doing, and you have to put in money into the idea. For you to get clearance certificates, for example, from the police, you need to pay a certain fee. For you to get stationery, all those things, they'll need money. So those are some of the challenges you may face as you start. And then also, like I have mentioned, when you're moving from one office to the other, you may face, hiccups here and there. People may frustrate you here and there. But aside from that, I think it's an exciting journey that I would recommend someone to go ahead and do it, especially if they really believe in the cause. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Ashley, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges with setting up a business?
One of the biggest challenges in setting up a business, actually, even before the PACRA registration starts, is finding a business that will be viable, a business that will generate the profits for you, because you don't just want to go into a business for the sake of going, but it's about finding something that will sustain the business, that will sustain you. So in setting up a business with PACRA, all those documentations to be done, what would be a big challenge is you not knowing what is required of you. Like the challenges that I had, not knowing what I had to do at what point. So basically, I would say those are the challenges. Once you have all those things in place, once you have all the documentation in place, then it's as easy. So opening a business with PACRA is not so difficult. That's one word of encouragement I would give you. It's not as difficult as it may be put. It's actually very easy.
Thanks, Ashley. So we will get to the chat box, but before we get to those, if you have any questions, please raise your hand and you can ask it directly as we also take up some of the questions in the chat box. So if you have any questions, I can see a hand up from Kingsley. Kingsley, please go ahead. So we'll take 3 questions and then we'll pause for the panelists to give responses. So Kingsley, then Mikisi, and if anyone else has any questions, you can just raise your hand. Kingsley.
All right, thank you very much to register this, because I registered my organization, Youth Care Impact, under PACRA on what is called limited by guarantee. That's where the organization was registered. And then the second question is that when an organization isn't receiving any funds from donors, how does the issue of paying tax comes in? Those are my 2 questions. I thank you.
Thanks, Kingsley. Mikisi, and then Mumba.
Okay, my question is how much is involved, like in the terms of registration under PACRA, together with in relation what? Okay, just on the money aspect, I'm sure some of us are behind because you haven't touched much of it. So on the money aspect, like how much is needed for the registration and everything? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mumba.
All right, so my question basically is for someone who's in school, who's in campus, that starts up an association right there, how do I diversify to get into the outside world after I leave the institution where I am?
Mumba, just some clarity. Do you mean starting up an association on campus, which is registered for campus, or just generally?
So actually, we're thinking of creating an association, and then we want it to run even after we have left campus. So now how do we move from being a campus association to being an independent association outside of the campus world?
Thanks, Mumba. The last 2 questions from Cynthia and Precious.
Okay, so I think I have 3 or 4 questions. My first question, I haven't typed in the chat box. I was under the impression that when you set up a non-profit, we're not paying any tax. But I think, was it Olivia, talk about when we register with PACRA, when we get a certificate, we'll be paying 4% tax to PACRA. And then my other question is articles of association needed for a non-profit, and basically the whole algorithm, because I was under the impression, because I've started, that we first we register with the community of registrars, then we don't really need to do anything with PACRA. If one NGO, you're just dealing with the community of registrars. And then today I've learned about the police clearance and the constitution, which I think when I was being advised was the articles of association. So I think maybe because I joined a bit late, like a clear algorithm of, okay, today I've decided I have my members and everybody, what's the stepwise algorithm that I'm going to follow to set up my organization. My last question is board of directors, how many are, like, what's a minimum of how many that I need? Yeah, I think that's all.
Thanks, Cynthia. We'll restrict it to only one question per person. So if you have 5 questions, just think of the most important one to ask. The last question from Precious.
Okay, so my question goes to Ashley. If you're a startup or business and you're mobile, on your requirements, you said you need proof of address to submit to PACRA. How do you go about that for a mobile business?
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for the first round. I'll hand over to the panelists to respond.
Hello? You can go first, Ashley.
Okay. Someone asked about the money involved in starting up. So with PACRA, when you go for application for the name clearance, the amount you'll be required to pay is 83 kwacha. Then once that is approved and you get to a point of registering for incorporation of that company, you'll be required to pay 1,000 kwacha, 1,000 kwacha. So the total amount required is 1,083 kwacha for you to open a business, a company with PACRA. And then the last question was that if you are opening a mobile business, then why do you require a physical address? A physical address is required for you to be traceable. You need to trace a business. PACRA needs to be able to trace the businesses that are opened up. In case of anything, in case of any follow-ups, they want to know where you are found, where they can find you. So that is why it is required that you indicate your physical address. Or you can also use the physical address, your physical address as an individual as a physical address for the business. So it's not so complicated. They just want to trace you, the owners of the business. Okay, thank you. I hand over to you, Peter.
Well, just before you come in, Peter, there was a question about what are the steps? Actually, we will need to tackle this from both the business side and from the nonprofit side. But from the business side, if you wake up today and you want to start, if you just have to summarize it in a couple of steps, how would you summarize it?
Okay, so you wake up today. First of all, you would think of the business. By the time you're waking up, actually, you would know what business you want to venture in. And then you need to have 1,083 kwacha in your pockets. So then you go and apply for a name clearance. You need to have 3 names that you are proposing for the business. 1 will be approved. After that is done, you need to, you'll be advised on the next step. That will be, sorry, just a second. So once the name clearance is done, then you do the application for incorporation for a private limited company. And then you also need to appoint the director and secretary. Then just on that, someone asked how many board of directors do you need? You need a minimum of 2 board directors and a secretary. Then after that application for the director and secretary, then you do the declaration of compliance. Also attach the articles of association that will guide the business, the way the business will be run. Those articles of association will also define what business you'll be dealing in. Then you're good to go, you're set. That will be it.
Thanks, Ashley. Peter, over to you.
Thank you very much. I'll start with the first question. I think that came from Kingsley. He spoke about paying tax for non-governmental organizations. So for NGOs, you are supposed to submit 0 returns, meaning you're not paying tax, because tax is you are taxed on the profits, but you're not making profits. But then the government wants to know whatever income is coming in, okay? And so you need to submit what are called 0 returns to the Minister of Community Development. It's not going to ZRA, because you submit those documents to the registrar, okay? And that is done on an annual basis. So at the end of the year, you do your returns, and then those are submitted to the registrar. And then someone spoke about forming an organization. Is it an organization or association while they're still in school or still in college or university? I think that is something that is very much possible. I've seen a number of organizations that were formed by people who are still in school. I don't know if we know Wumba Malambo, she's one of them. Wumba formed the organization at the time that she was still in school, and she was able to support orphans and vulnerable children in the community. Today, we are talking about a big brand now. Yeah, so if you are still in college, you're still in university, and you're interested to do this, it's something that can be done, okay? As long as you have something to kickstart, you have the resources, you don't need much. In terms of the registration, you only need to pay for, you need to pay about 840 kwacha for the registration. And then for police clearance, I think it's 100 and something, I'm not sure, but 95, 100 kwacha, I'm not sure, but it's not more than 120 kwacha. That's per individual, those that will be members of the organization. So each of those members, a minimum of 5, will have to do the clearance, which will cost less than 125 kwacha. Aside from that, it's just the basics like photocopying and printing, because when you come up with your constitution, obviously you need to type it, you need to have it printed and all those things, and you need 3 copies of your constitution. Then what I forgot to mention also, the constitution has to be certified. It has to be certified by what do you call this? This office. Sorry, I've forgotten, but when I remember, I'll be able to share, but it has to be certified, okay? By the Commissioner of Oaths, my apologies. The Commissioner for Oaths, they have to certify 3 copies of your constitution, okay? I think I've answered the tax part. And then I think Cynthia spoke about the steps for setting up an NGO. It's very simple. It's very simple and straightforward. So when you decide what you want to do as an organization, the area that you want to be focusing on, you decide on those. You have your team. You sit together and come up with the constitution. I don't know if there's time. I don't have to go through the process of coming up with the constitution and the contents of the constitution, but basically your constitution will have to have all those details about what you'll be doing, the membership and all those things. So when you come up with the constitution, the next step would be to get your name cleared. If you have the name in mind, you have it cleared in the process that I mentioned earlier on. Once your name is cleared, you get your recommendation letter from the Minister of Community Development or any line ministry that is related to the core business of whatever you'll be doing. Once you have your recommendation letter, obviously when you are getting the name clearance, you have collected the application letters, application documents from the Minister of Community Development. So you have those documents together. Everything that you'll be submitting, it will have to be triplicate, meaning 3 copies. So your constitution will be 3 copies, your application letter will be in 3 copies, your commendation letter, and so on and so forth. So you put those documents together and you submit at the Ministry of Community Development through the office of the registrar. So the composition of the membership to form an NGO, the minimum number is 5. Thank you very much. I hope I was clear. I don't know if I've left any question unanswered.
Thank you so much, Peter. I have seen a number of people asking questions. We will give 2 more question slots, and I'll give a chance to those that have not asked. I must mention that there are quite a lot of people who have managed to start while they were students. Copper Rose was started by students, by the way. Copper Rose was started by young people who were students, and when we started, we had no money. We got our money from door-to-door campaigns on campus, literally knocking and asking for 10 kwachas from our fellow students. And right now we're fully fledged organizations with offices, we recruit people, we work in almost half of the country. And this is just to show that it really is possible to get these things done. I will call upon a few people. There are a couple of people I know who may have started organizations here, just to give it a real feel to it. If you've started an organization before, what would you say about the registration process? Is there anyone here who's registered before who could share their experience on what the registration process looks like in real life? Anyone? Okay, while we're waiting for that, okay, I can see people raising their hand. I'll ask someone that hasn't said anything. But while we're waiting for that, Evelyn, I'll let you ask your question. And then we can wrap up because we're at the top of the hour.
All right. Thank you so much. Can you get me?
Yes, we can get you.
Okay. So my question is going to both Peter and Ashley. What are some of the strategies you guys use to market your brand? Like, how do you grow your brand? And are there any tips that you can offer to startups on how to market your product or service? Thank you.
Okay. On the perspective of NGOs, on the perspective of NGOs, marketing your brand is very important. But then the starting point is your choice of your intervention area really matters. You know, at every given time, there are certain issues that are affecting people. Okay, many organizations are formed as a result of challenges that are identified in the different localities. And so, for example, right now, I'll give climate change is one big issue that we are facing right now. Health is one big aspect that we are facing, a big issue. And issues to do with governance. And so when you are starting, when you're starting up an NGO, you need to understand, you know, all these things, all these issues that are surrounding the community. So you need to make a proper identification. You need to identify a proper challenge, you know, that the people are facing that you want, you know, to intervene. Because if you identify something that is not considered as a problem, you know, or as a challenge at a given time, no one will want to fund you, because the funders, the donors are looking at how can NGOs support to overcome certain challenges that people are facing. And so if you make a wrong choice, then you have a problem there. Secondly, once you have identified your area of intervention, you want to let people know that you exist. And luckily enough for us today, we have the internet. You know, whatever you are doing, you need to make sure that you are selling out there. It may be a non-profit organization, but it has a certain feel to it that relates to a for-profit organization. And so whatever you are doing, you need to document. You need to document. You need to show impact of the interventions that you are making. For example, if you are targeting communities that have a challenge of alcohol and drug abuse, substance abuse, you want to show that your interventions are yielding results. You want to show the world that what you are doing is meaningful to that particular society. And that's where your selling comes in. So marketing is really important. You can use the social media, you can use the internet, you can use different platforms, joining different organizational groupings. For different intervention areas, we have got different structures that have been put together by government. That is in the Zambian setup. And so you find that, for example, for organizations that are dealing with health-related issues, there are groupings like the district health committees, all those platforms that you can use to sell, you know, the things that you are doing. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Peter. Ashley, what are your thoughts on marketing?
On marketing, first of all, I'll go back to the inception. You need to do a business. You need to open a business that you should be proud of, that you'll be confident about, so that even when it's time to market, you're confident to post your business on social media. And like, you know, there's businesses that are started up and the owners are not so proud of them, but they're doing it because it's making money for them. But when you do something that you're proud of, you'll be able to advertise and market it anywhere. You'll be a brand ambassador. That's one thing as well. You need to be a brand ambassador of your business. You need to carry your business with you. You need to be the face of the business as well. So as Peter said, you need to document your achievements, the clients that you serve. Sometimes the clients that we serve get to market us as well. Like, for example, when I say on our profile, when I'm giving you a profile of our business, I say, no, we've served Konkola Copper Mines, we've served Mupani, we served the GRZ. Most businesses will be interested and they'll have some confidence to say, no, these people are serious. So once you document who you've worked with and indicate that in your profile, it also acts as a way of marketing your brand, marketing your business. So in this era where everyone is on social media, you can take advantage of that. Instagram, WhatsApp, Twitter, you can market your products on those platforms as well.
Thank you, Ashley. And
as a small business, it won't be easy to advertise your products on ZNBC like Trade Kings does, on Zambezi Magic, but you can take advantage of these platforms that don't require you to spend for you to advertise. Then you can also do door-to-door advertisements with your prospective clients, where you just approach your clients, explain about your product. You can't always wait for business to follow. You need to follow the business. That is how it is in the business, but you need to push yourself to make that happen.
Thanks, Ashley. Just to speak on advertising, it's very important in the beginning to remember that you are an ambassador of the products. I remember when we started Copper Rose and I was a student at the time, we were talking about menstrual hygiene so much that every time I'm walking around on campus, people would be like, "Somebody my pads bag." Like, for those that don't understand, it's like, so you probably have pads in that backpack you're carrying, even if it's not related. That's how much branding you need to do. So we've gone past the hour that we had planned to do, and I just want to wind up by giving 5 steps on how to set up, because today's session has been focused mostly on the registration part. We will be continuing next week at the same time to cover some of the questions you might have. So if you have questions that you think were not answered, you can send them in the email at info@copperrosezambia.org, and we will tackle them next week. So next week we will continue and thinking through you've now registered, then what? But just before we close, I want to just share some of the lessons that we've learned. And if we have to summarize this in 5 steps, what would we say are the steps that one would take? So 5 steps to setting up. First thing is you need to identify a cause. In this case, if it's a business, what type of business is it? If it's an NGO, what type of NGO are you trying to set up? What is your cause? Is it climate change? Is it sexual and reproductive health? Is it economic empowerment? So first thing you need to do is to identify the cause. The second thing you need to do is get the necessary documentation. If you're going to register with PACRA as a company limited by guarantee, what steps will you need to take? If you're going to register with the Ministry of Community Development, what papers do you need? You need to get those in order, get your NRCs verified and all those kind of things. If you are struggling with documentation, Google is a very useful tool. Sometimes people are struggling with the constitution. Just Google NGO constitution. There are so many templates out there that you can start with. And then as you go along, you can amend them with time. The third thing you need to do, most people fail to start because they have a big dream, but they fail to bring it down to a small thing. So for example, your dream is about climate change and you want us to start saving the environment. What part of that big dream can you start today? That is where most people go wrong, and that's where most people usually stop. Which part of your big vision can you start today? Yes, you want to be a successful business person. Can you sell maybe earrings or something as a start as you are getting to your goal to open up your own shop? Because sometimes we think of our dreams so big that it's sometimes harder to start with the resources that we have. As an example, Copper Rose started with donations from our friends on campus. And that was some kind of fundraising, but that goes to show that you can start from anywhere. If you want to open up a hair salon, can you braid people's hair at your home? And that's something to think about. So pick an aspect of the cause that you can start with today that you will continue to expand as time goes by. The fourth thing is that you need to raise funds for the one thing you have identified. So if you've identified that you will need to first start with a pad donation, for example, you raise funds for that. Sometimes we get so defeated by the fact that we're thinking we have to buy all these machines when you can start making those hair products by hand. I've seen a number of people start from their backyards or from their homes. So you only need to raise funds to market that product or to make that product on a small scale. Coca-Cola only sold 1 bottle in its first year. They needed huge machines, but they only needed to make their first bottle first. So you only need to raise funds for the initial startup, and that's something you should think about. And that makes it a little bit easier. The fifth step is that you need to execute. A lot of people just end at steps 1 up to 4. So they're only thinking about raising funds. When time comes to execute, they either feel lazy, they have excuses and things like that. So the fifth step is to execute and use social media because you are the best and cheapest form of advertising there is in the initial stages. So I'll stop sharing my screen here, and in respect of time, I can see that there are some hands that are still up. We will have to close here. There is a link for the evaluation that is in the chat box. I'm sure you've seen Copper Rose posting that link. Please fill in the evaluation form because that helps us determine what kind of sessions we can bring for you. This is part of our organization capacity building component for our youth hub, and we will continue running these sessions. So when you fill in the form, it helps us know what kind of sessions we will have. I also want to mention that there are a lot of questions that are going down about fundraising. We had a 3-part series on fundraising. You can check our YouTube channel or our social media on the Copper Rose Facebook page. We do have all the recordings for our live sessions there. So just go to our Facebook page and scroll through the videos. You will find all the sessions that we've had in the past. But as we close, I just want to get one word of encouragement from each of our speakers and each of our panelists. How would you say the process should be, and what kind of encouragement would you give to someone who wants to start a business, and what do you think they should take along with from the whole session we've had today?
My encouragement would be to encourage someone to start today, start from somewhere. Don't wait for you to have all the funds that you need for that big dream that you have, but you can start today with the little that you have, and you'll be able to work towards what you want to achieve. Starting today will give you the motivation and the morale, depending on the response that you get from your client or from the community. You'll be encouraged to do more, and you'll be able to attract people who can assist you in achieving your goal after seeing your passion. It's all about passion. Start today and things will move.
Thanks, Ashley. Peter, any last words?
Sure. Speaking like a motivational speaker, most of them will tell you that you start a barber shop with a bottle of mutated spirit. But yeah, realistically speaking, what will drive you to come up with an organization that will really impact people's lives and your country, your community, is your passion. Okay, so if you're passionate about your cause, if you're passionate about something that you feel like there's a gap and you need to change the things that you don't like, you just need to start from wherever you are with whatever you have. You don't need millions to start an NGO. Like I said, you can start from as little as 1,000 kwacha, and then your organization will have kickstarted. I've given an example of Umba Malambo. She was just a student when she started her programs, and right now she's a big brand. There's an example that we have not too far from here, Copper Rose, which started, from the ground. Right now, they're impacting lives, they are touching lives of young girls and women and the youth and things like that. And so you just need to start from wherever you are, just have that passion, and you'll be good to go. Information is everywhere. Google is there. There are platforms like this that we're having right now that can help you to build your dream and be able to impact, the communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you everyone for joining. For those that want airtime, we will be in touch. Michelle will be in touch with you. Just make sure you send your number to the name that says Copper Rose in the chat box. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining, and thank you so much to our speakers for sparing the time. Today is Friday, and to everyone else, please continue to follow our social media pages. We will advertise and send the link for the next session, which is scheduled to happen on Friday next week. If you have any questions that you really feel were not adequately answered, please feel free to send an email to info@copperrosezambia.org, and we will be ready to discuss with you. The recording will be shared. I'm sure all of you registered, so all the emails under the registration link will receive the recording. But between now and then, this discussion has been streamed live on Facebook, so you can just go back and watch, rewind, anything that you may have missed and may want to share with others. Otherwise, thank you so much, everyone, and have a lovely Friday.
Thank you. Good day.